Well, according to Financial Times, there's been a 40% increase in global food prices in the last 15 months. And the impact on poorer countries is becoming acute. And there's a burden on countries like Nigeria. What are countries doing to buffer the impact of this hike in food prices? We have Favor Oguniroyi, analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, to discuss this with us. Hello, Favor. Good to have you. Good afternoon.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Good to have you. So the 15 months we're talking about is, majorly the period within the pandemic. Can we say that the root cause of this hike is the pandemic, or are there other factors that have led to this 40% hike?
Looking at the increase in global food prices, we've seen that COVID-19 definitely had an impact, and that has largely due to the restrictions and the lockdowns, which affected business activities, even in the agricultural sector, and that has limited the supply, which also caused food items to increase, the price of food items to increase. But then there are also other factors that come into play. One would be the unfavorable weather condition due to the climate change. For instance, in Brazil, they are currently experiencing frost and drought, which is affecting production as well. And then we also have increase in transportation costs as oil prices increase. We also see that the cost of labor has increased as well. And then there's also the fact that most of these commodities do have multiple uses, and that is fueling demand because it's not only used for direct human consumption, but they also have industrial purposes. So all of this put together is driving the price of food to go higher.
Countries doing to buffer this, because food is a necessity, so you can't run away from it. What are countries doing to buffer this hike in prices?
If you look at the perception of inflation, people believe that it is transient, which means that it is short-lived. And so what we've seen that countries are now focusing on the direct impact of COVID on livelihood by administering stimulus packages. And then for food inflation, which is majorly driven by supply shortages induced by the pandemic, we see that these countries are now trying to increase vaccination rates. And we hear that the US and some countries are now trying to force their citizens to take the vaccine. And so all of this is what they're trying to do to reduce the impact of pandemic-related problems on supply.
Now, let's come home now. Nigeria's inflation figures for August is due tomorrow. We're watching the MBS space for that, because that's a schedule, that's the day they have on their schedule. And your company, the FDC, is projecting that headline inflation will moderate to 16.8% from 17.38% in July, while food inflation will decline to 20.85% from 21.03% in July. What factors have you considered to predict a decline in food inflation?
Well, for context first, FDC's forecast, it looked at Lagos market and as the scope. So, and the reason we're expecting a moderation is because we've seen an increase in food supply due to the harvest season. So, for instance, commodities like onions, tomatoes, yam, and palm oil have declined by like an average of 18.4% in August, just due to the harvest. But then commodities which have import content are expected to see an increase in price because of the currency pressure as well. But then, as we now approach Q4 2021, we are expecting an increase in demand due to the festivities and all, and we could possibly see a reversal in the downward trend in inflation numbers if the current supply doesn't meet that demand.
So it's just a short-lived tapering that we're expecting from the eyes of the FDC. Anyway, thank you so much, Favor, for sharing your thoughts with us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.